Vietnam is an extremely affordable country, but here are 5 tips that are going to save you even more money. Let's start off with transportation. The first thing that you're going to want to do when you arrive in Vietnam is to download Grab. Grab is essentially Vietnam's version of Uber, and the reason that you're going to want to use Grab, especially at the airport, is because a lot of times taxis will take advantage of tourists who, well, don't have any options available to them right then and there. Once you've established a relationship with a driver, if you are in a city that maybe you're going to want to go see a few different destinations, sometimes you can actually negotiate and get a good deal to say, hey, I'm going to travel to a lot of different places tomorrow. Let me negotiate and get a deal with you and not necessarily go through the app. But it is a little bit easier for me to do something like that because my wife is from Vietnam and she speaks Vietnamese. So it may be harder for you to do that. You may have to find somebody that actually does speak English fairly well. Now, also another risk of doing that is that technically now you are not going through the company. And I do feel like there is a slight layer of protection knowing that, well, this app knows you're supposed to be somewhere. Even though I've never had any issues, I've never met somebody with ill intent, I guess just keep that in your mind. If you are going to negotiate with somebody directly, there's always a slight risk there, so maybe just see how things feel to you. Now, when it comes to further destinations, generally speaking, buses and trains are your cheaper options, although they will take you quite a bit longer than jumping on a plane that may actually not be too much more expensive. And I know this video is all about saving you money, but do take into account that a lot of times it takes a lot of money to go somewhere like Vietnam, and you may be limited in your time that you're spent there. So sometimes it may be worth spending the extra bit of money and shaving off like 8 hours of travel time and maybe save that money in another category. And speaking of another category, the next thing that we're going to go over is accommodations. So if you can't tell, I'm going to be giving you more than just 5 tips, but saving you money in 5 different areas. It just didn't ring as much of a bell on YouTube. So you're gonna get more than 5 tips, but sit back. I'm gonna try to go through these very fast. Now, when it comes to places to stay, there's a wide range of how much you can spend based upon if you wanna go with a hostel and save the most money, all the way up to a high-end luxury resort. But a few tips that I'll give you that hopefully can save you money no matter which way you decide to go is, one thing, make sure to have a VPN. Sometimes your computer can still show that you're from the United States, even if you're in a foreign country. And if it does that, then you're not likely to get any kind of local rates when you're looking things up. And actually, sometimes the local prices will not be even as good as what travelers can get. Depending on the property, it seems like some places want tourists more and some people want locals more. It's a weird balance, but it seems like sometimes you get a better deal one way and sometimes you do another. Also, by having a VPN, it allows you to check multiple places from different places. That way the websites do not catch that you're the same person checking over and over again, and sometimes they start to jack up the price if they see that, hey, this person's looking for something, let's make them nervous. And when it comes to travel websites in Vietnam, I find that Agoda and Booking.com are both very good options. Personally, I've started to go more with Booking.com because it feels like they let you know all the taxes and fees right up front. With Agoda, sometimes you'll look at it and be like, oh my gosh, that's super cheap, and they say there's a locals discount, but by the time you click on everything and they add these different taxes and fees and whatever else they add to it, a lot of times it ends up about at the same place. So sometimes Booking.com can just save you the hassle. Now, depending on your risk tolerance, sometimes you can get a better deal by like booking one night, for example, with Booking.com, and then when you get there, negotiate based upon that price for further days. They sometimes will like to do that because they don't have to split everything with Booking. Now, it's up to you whether or not you want to take that risk, because there's always a chance that maybe the hotel will book up. So maybe use your own discretion on whether or not you want to do that. Now, another thing that you can consider when finding somewhere to stay is you don't just have hostels and hotels that you can choose from. There are also things that are similar equivalents to Airbnbs where you can rent, for example, an apartment. A lot of times you can get those for as cheap or even cheaper than some hotels, and that way you will have a kitchen if you do want to do some cooking while you're there. And that brings me on to the next category, and that is food. So when it comes to food, if you do decide to actually eat in sometimes, of course you're going to save some money. But one thing I will say is that fast food is not necessarily your friend when it comes to saving money. A lot of times people think that fast food, or at least in the States or in some Western countries, are going to be the cheapest option. But from my experience, generally speaking, street food and smaller local restaurants are gonna save you the most money, and you're gonna get some amazing food out of it as well. And of course, the more lavish restaurants and even fast food are gonna cost you more. So now you're in Vietnam, you've got someone to drive you to wherever you're staying, you have some food in your stomach. The big question is now, what do you do? So the category of what do you do and how to save money there is to think about some of the free attractions that you can go to. Many of the best experiences that I've had are at the free attractions, such as the temples and some of the parks, and of course beaches. So there's a lot of things that you can do that will give you a very fulfilling, fun trip that do not cost you a lot of money. Sometimes at a temple, maybe you want to give a donation here and there. Those type of experiences are much cheaper than going on a tour or going to tourist attractions such as amusement parks and things of that nature. Now, those things can be fun as well and may be worth doing. It just depends on, well, your budget. And that brings us to the final category, and that is shopping. For sure, when you are shopping, feel comfortable and expect to bargain. I think some people maybe do not feel as comfortable with the idea of bargaining, but especially in like shops and night markets and things of that nature, bargaining is kind of expected. And if you're going in there just paying the sticker price, well, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. Now, one thing that I do like to do, especially if you're getting maybe a lot of stuff for people that you're going to maybe take home for, be prepared to maybe like do a bundle bargain. So kind of say, well, how much is this and how much is this other thing, and kind of get their prices on stuff, and then maybe loop it all in together and say, well, no, I'll give you this much for a whole group of things. Try to get things thrown in. A lot of times that's a pretty good bargaining technique that I've found. Now, as far as the convenience of if you are buying in bulk and you're buying for people back home, I do always recommend that maybe wait till your last stop. Maybe you're in Ho Chi Minh City flying out or in Hanoi flying out. A lot of the souvenirs that you can find pretty much all over the country can be found within Hanoi or in Ho Chi Minh City. So maybe wait till like the last minute before doing that, so you're not having to carry or wag a bunch of stuff around throughout the duration of your trip. But those are just five categories of tips that I have for you today. Drop in the comment section below and let me know if you have any tips of your own. And if this has been helpful, be sure to give this thing a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing. And until next time, peace.